On Rang De India this evening, we are looking at how a social investment in education can transform the lives of millions of children in our country. As a parent myself, I'm sure I would be joined by countless others distressed to see what our children are facing in the midst of this pandemic. An online education can never replicate the real one, but that's a reality that we just have to accept now. In some parts of India, schools are beginning to reopen, but teachers have had to go through salary cuts. For low-income households, affording a proper school education is now a bigger challenge than ever before. And then there is, of course, a gigantic mountain we just must overcome: India's digital divide. We often talk about an online education without for a moment remembering that any number of children in India can neither afford a smartphone, let alone a computer, or even an internet connection to connect them to their education.
वाकई में हम सब ने देखा है कि जो कोरोना है उसने हमारी सेहत ही नहीं, उसने हमारे बच्चों की जो स्कूली शिक्षा, पढ़ाई, उसके समग्र जो विकास है उस पर एक आघात पहुंचाया है। खास तौर से जो कमज़ोर वर्ग के परिवार के जो बच्चे आते हैं, सबके लिए जिस तरह से विष्णु भी बता रहे थे, ऑनलाइन एजुकेशन का सामर्थ्य जुटाना, लैपटॉप होना, स्मार्टफोन होना बिल्कुल ज़रूरी नहीं था। कईयों के तो स्कूल ही छूट गए, माता पिता की नौकरी चली गई तो फीस कैसे वो भरते। बहरहाल अब एक योजना लेकर आया है रंग दे। आपको याद होगा कुछ महीनों पहले वो किसानों, हस्तशिल्पकारों के लिए एक योजना लेकर आए थे इंटरेस्ट फ्री लोन की, यानी लोन मिले उसमें आपको ब्याज ना देना पड़े। वाकई में बहुत राहत की खबर है और ऐसे परिवारों के लिए है जो कमज़ोर आर्थिक परिवारों से आते हैं, अपने बच्चों को शिक्षा देना चाहते हैं, एक गरिमापूर्ण जीवन देना चाहते हैं, लेकिन उनको ऐसा लोन कहाँ से मिले जहाँ पर उनको इंटरेस्ट ना देना हो। तो रंग दे इसी मुहिम के साथ आज आया है और इस लोन में अगर आप इसमें अपना योगदान देंगे तो आप बच्चों की ट्यूशन फीस, उनकी एडमिशन फीस, जो गैजेट्स होते हैं, लैपटॉप, स्मार्टफोन्स इत्यादि, कनेक्शन, इंटरनेट कनेक्शन, तमाम आप ये योगदान दे पाएंगे। और आपको ऐसा भी बता दें, ऐसे बहुत अफोर्डेबल प्राइवेट स्कूल्स हैं जहाँ पर महीने की जो फीस है सिर्फ 1000 रुपये ही है। तो आप आज जुड़ सकते हैं और क्योंकि बच्चों को हमें बचाना है, क्योंकि जब विपरीत स्थिति से बच्चे आते हैं तो कुछ अपराध की ओर चले जाते हैं, कुछ बाल मजदूरी करने को मजबूर हो जाते हैं, कुछ डिप्रेशन के शिकार भी हो जाते हैं। तो आइए मिलकर हम अपना योगदान करेंगे और आज इस मुहिम के साथ जुड़ते हैं।
Yes, as you were saying, Nidhi and Vishnu, if the future of our country depends on one thing, it's the education of our children. We all know that. Going to school is life-changing. And the most amazing aspect of India is the little-known fact that almost 50% of our schools, just under 50%, are private schools, and only just over 50% are government schools. And by private schools, we mean even the small schools in villages and small towns, which are increasingly in demand. You know, parents all across our country are really focused on sending their children to school. And there's a growing belief that private school education is better than government schools. In fact, in the last 25 years, look at the change. Parents are sending their children to private schools. These are unaided private schools. That has seen the biggest growth. The growth in pure private schools in villages, small towns, and in large towns has gone up by 25%. While parents sending their children to government schools has fallen by 18%. Now there's a major story behind all this shift from government to private. And not all government schools are bad, but the general reputation is that people are now preferring to send their children to private schools. And we shall come to the reasons for this during the course of this program. Now, because our parents are so focused on educating their children, they even borrow money from money lenders and others to pay for their children's education and school fees. Often parents have to pay money lenders 75% in interest every year. Now, what Rang De plans to do, and that's what this whole program is about, it's a really brilliant scheme, conceived by the founders, Smita and Ram. It's to give education loans to parents for sending their children to school. They don't have to go to money lenders. Rangde will give them. But the Rangde loans will be interest-free, zero interest. So parents just have to pay back the actual principal of the loan. Zero interest, remember that. Now this could have a huge impact on the number of our children being able to go to school. So what we are asking all our viewers today is to please help our children go to school in the following way. Rangde is not asking for a donation, no. Say you decide to help children with 10,000 rupees or 50,000 or more, whatever. You send that money to Rangde. They will return all that money to you. It's not a donation, it's a loan. They'll return all that money to you, but you're giving a loan without interest, of course. So they'll give you the principal back. If you gave 10,000, they'll give you 10,000 back. If you give 50,000, 50,000 back, etc. But you see, with that loan, interest-free loan, you will help so many children to get an education, particularly the girl child. And the other important aspect of Rangde is its total transparency, which I love. Once you loan your money or you donate earlier for the education of children, you can go to the Rangde website at any time and see exactly how your money is being used and spent. So please, please come forward and send money to Rangde to help more and more of our children to go to school and have a life-changing experience. That's what this is all about.
Well, on the first part of this program, we'll be looking at the crisis at hand, the extent of the problem, school fees, the cost of a digital education, and how and why access to affordable and accessible credit is key to give any number of children a real shot at a future. Well, joining us now, Muhammad Yunus, the founder of Grameen Bank, Nobel laureate, Magsaysay awardee. Wonderful that you can join us on this program. We are truly honored. Sir, the pandemic has had a very unequal impact on people. In India, for example, lakhs have been set back financially for years. They've moved from the lower middle class to poverty. And that's been statistically proven, I mean, over and over again. How do we manage this situation now? How should we be responding to the impact of the pandemic on poor people?
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me and raising this very fundamental question during this pandemic period. As soon as the pandemic began, what you just narrated for India, it also became true all over the world. It's not just India. Because the economic setup that we have, the system that we have globally, follows the same system. Bulk of the population is near the bottom of the pyramid, the bottom of the income level of all countries. So if you put if you draw a line for $5.50 in income per day, half the population will be under that globally. So this is a kind of half the population of the entire world below that. And then if a pandemic comes, these people are pushed further down. And those who barely crossed the poverty line before the pandemic, we're all excited, improvement is happening and the poverty is improving. Only just around that poverty line, slightly above. Then the wind came and pushed us all back under that poverty line. That's the description that you gave. So we have to look at the system itself, why it happens, why all the people have to live close to that line, everybody. Like if half the population is under $5.50, if you add another $5.50, probably 75% of the population of the entire world is in there. Why is that? Where is the wealth? Where is the income? It's way above, somewhere else. So why this distance between the wealth and the income and the people? Who created this machine, which separates out, segregates people from the wealth? So we need a different kind of machine to build them together, to bring it together so that people and the wealth live together. So this pandemic raises this question. We have to redesign things in a way. So how to address this right away? Rangde is doing one part, this important part, in a small way, is a kind of initiative to demonstrate that it can be done, offering credit, financing. And financing is so important for people to survive, people to discover the entrepreneurship. When we talk about education, behind that is a very powerful thing, is entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurship and education, when you combine, you don't need anybody else. All you need, finance has to be there so that you can bring this together. And the world can be made by people by themselves. So this is the missing piece of the entire system. The financial system is mess. It's never addressed the people below that level that we are talking, $5.50 people. That's not the education, banking system is all about. So we have to redesign banking system to create a banking system which addresses that, provides that. And that's what the initiative Down is having right now.
So I think Prannoy had a question to you as well.
Mohammed Yunus, thank you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good to see you.
So many small businesses have been destroyed or received a really huge blow. So many children have lost their education, have seen their education disrupted. Tell us about the kind of role that microcredit and social businesses, social investing can play in rebuilding livelihoods and providing access to schools and education for the poorer people in our society.
Yeah. So even before pandemic, in a normal day, still there, it's same problem, but in pandemic it gets condensed. It becomes very, very big, unbearable. But so what we did, we tried to bring finance to the poor people. That's what the microcredit was created. And we gave education loan for the children of Grameen families, because all our borrowers, 97% of our borrowers are women. Out of 9 million borrowers, they are the 97%. But they're all illiterate, cannot read, cannot write. And that's the way they join. So we wanted to make sure that their children get literacy, get education. So we introduced right from the beginning with the Grameen Bank education loan. If you can cross the primary school, you'll be financed to go to the high school. And if you cross the high school, you'll be financed to go to the college, university, and so on. So we have created lots of graduates, lots of master's degrees, lots of PhDs, out of the totally illiterate families coming from the poor families, just by providing the financing system into it. In order to make it more strong and sustainable, we created an organization called Grameen Shikha, exclusively paying attention to the children of poor families, provide them the financing. And we tried all kinds of financing. Rang Day is coming with this interest-free loan. We have interest-free loans. We have donations. We have taken money from people who want to help sponsor these children. So you sponsor the children and give an X amount of money, and we manage your money to see that that child goes into education. And that child not only goes into education, in many cases they are going to the college, university, and doing wonderful work, master's degrees, some even doing their PhDs, just because the finance was available. So we have varieties of our programs addressing all kinds of people, all through the financing. We have a financing system where you can put X amount of money just to give it to us, and we'll not touch your money. We'll just take the income of your money and use it as scholarship. It's not a loan. We just take the income of your money as a scholarship going to the children. So I'm not saying giving interest-free loan is a bad thing. It is a good thing, very good thing, because you can draw a lot more money by doing that, and immediately can make it available. But point is, you can make this huge one, not just 50,000 students or some small number of students, millions of students, if we have the financial system standing behind it. And you can organize the businesses and so on who will be providing that financing as a kind of interest-free loan to you, so that you can use it as interest-free loan to somebody else, and that kind of extension can be done. So this connectivity is very important there.
Yeah, no, the interest-free loans and the way that it actually works, so important in us actually understanding this. Prannoy?
So Mohammed Yunus, how can we ensure that the education of our children is not sacrificed because of the hardships their families may be facing in this pandemic, and generally poorer families who still want their children to have a life-changing experience going to school? How can that be done through microcredit?
In our case, again, what we did, just to respond to your same question, we said not a single child from Grameen families skip education. So it's our total dedication. It's our staff who are handling money as a credit operation and so on, responsible to keep watch on every child from every family that they're working with. So that a child not only was going to school, making sure he and she stay in the school. Sometimes you enroll it in the poor families, and before you know, they left the school doing something else. So it's our responsibility to make sure the child remains in school, and whatever is needed so that bank can support it, so on. So we need organization to be built like that. It's not one initiative. We have to create massive number of initiatives. That's where the social business comes. We create like Grameen Shikha like organization as a social business. You invest in that business, not to make money, but to solve a specific problem, the problem that we were talking about, education, for example. If you have agricultural bank, you have fisheries bank, you have that kind of bank, why not education bank? How create financing? It's not only financing for your education, also going beyond that, financing your equity for your entrepreneurship. You will not end up just giving you a degree and then on your own find a job. It's not like that. We take full responsibility of make sure that it's ultimately you turn into an entrepreneur, and finance will be available to you from the same source. So we follow you from the very beginning to all the way to turn you into an entrepreneur who can not only take care of yourself, you contribute to the economy and make sure that your ability and your talent is useful to the society, not condemned by the system that where it only pushes you into job.
बिल्कुल यूनुस सर, आप हमारे साथ जुड़े, बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। और वाकई में ये हम सबका दायित्व बन जाता है कि अगर हमें किसी भी छात्र को एनरोल करा रहे हैं तो उसकी शिक्षा पूरी हो। अगर ये हो सके तो इससे बड़ा काम और क्या हो सकता है। बहरहाल एक अच्छी खबर आ रही है हम सबके लिए। कार्यक्रम अभी शुरू हुआ है विष्णु। हम देख सकते हैं 20 लाख रुपए का इंटरेस्ट फ्री लोन के लिए किसी ने प्लेज किया है। उनका नाम हमें पता नहीं है, लेकिन बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद कि आपने ये 20 लाख रुपए प्लेज किए हैं। वाकई में ये बच्चों के लिए, उनके भविष्य के लिए बहुत ही फायदेमंद रहेगा और बहुत ही ज़रूरी है इस समय। और ये मुहिम जो रंग दे खास तौर से लेकर आया है, ये इसलिए समय अहम हो जाती है क्योंकि जो शिक्षा का क्षेत्र है वो बहुत गहरे तौर पर प्रभावित हुआ है। हम सब जानते हैं कि एक 50%, जिस तरह से डॉक्टर रॉय भी बता रहे थे कि 50% जो हमारे छात्र हैं वो सरकारी स्कूलों में पढ़ते हैं, लेकिन जो और 50% प्राइवेट स्कूल्स में पढ़ते हैं उसके भी 70% जो बच्चे हैं वो अफोर्डेबल प्राइवेट स्कूल्स में पढ़ते हैं। बच्चे, हमारे देश के जो परिवार हैं बहुत एस्पिरेशनल हैं, क्यों नहीं वो एक अच्छी प्राइवेट शिक्षा भी पाएं। सरकारी शिक्षा जहां पर अच्छी है वो बहुत अपने आप में स्वागत योग्य है, लेकिन अपने आप में अगर जो परिवार गरिमा से अपने बच्चों को शिक्षा देना चाहते हैं लोन लेकर जिसमें उनको बिल्कुल भी इंटरेस्ट ना देना पड़े, तो ये मुहिम बहुत ही कारगर है। रंग दे के आप हमारे साथ जुड़ सकते हैं।
Well, joining us now, Kumari Shebulal, the founder of Sarojini Damodaran Foundation. Thank you, Mrs. Shebulal, for being with us. Thank you for being a part of this campaign. Now, you are, of course, the founder of Sarojini Damodaran, and your philanthropic work is in areas including healthcare, organic farming, social welfare. But you've also chosen education as an area of specific focus. Why? How did you get into this? Why is education so important in the context of what you do?
My mother was illiterate, but she has seen people who come to the village as doctors or doctors in that primary health center or the teachers in the school. But she said the life of those people, they are much better than the life in the village. So she thought her children also should get education, and she insisted that we will go to school and get the education. Those times, what happens was during the harvest time or any of those agriculture time, none of the children will be in the school. So they all wanted to work in the field and support the family.
Right.
But my parents insisted that I should get a good education and get a better life. So that is the one of the reasons that we choose education as our focus point. And because of the education, we are here right now.
Mrs. Shebulal, if you had to explain to people watching, and including me, why is it so crucial for all of us to support the cause of ensuring that education is not disrupted for an entire generation? How would you describe it? What would you say?
Yes, actually, I can give an example. Yesterday, I received a call from my school, and we have a hostel there. That hostel is for the underprivileged children. They are studying in the school, because if they are in their houses, they will not be able to study. So yesterday night I got a call from Colonel Menon, who is the director of my Ankur program, the hostel program. He said the government has ordered that all the children has to go home. And we work so hard to, with these children to make up their studies and their emotional and all the well-being. But now all of them have to go back. It is really hard, so because once they go home, they don't have any of the, they will not even have food. They will not be able to study properly how we were doing there. So there is lot of children are struggling like that. So people like us has to support these children. Only then they can get an improved life and get a better life.
बिल्कुल, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद हमारे साथ जुड़ने के लिए कुमारी जी, क्योंकि ये बहुत अहम हो जाता है कि जो ख़ास तौर से लड़कियां हैं उनकी जो शिक्षा है वो ख़ास तौर से प्रभावित हुई है। अब हमारे साथ बेहद ख़ास मेहमान हैं विनीता बाली, फॉर्मर CEO मैनेजिंग डायरेक्टर ब्रिटानिया इंडस्ट्रीज़। मैं आपसे विनीता जी ये समझना चाहूँगी कि इस तरह की जो सामाजिक दायित्वों की मुहिम होती है वो कितनी अहम हो जाती है कि किसी परिवार को लोन भी मिले लेकिन उसकी जो गरिमा सम्मान है वो भी बना रहे, और ख़ासतौर से शिक्षा के क्षेत्र में जो लोग काम कर रहे हैं, संस्थाएं काम कर रही हैं, उनको ऐसी योजनाएं कितनी मजबूती दे सकती हैं?
थैंक यू निधि, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। जो आपने प्रश्न पूछा है वो बहुत अहमियत रखता है, क्योंकि इस समय जो चैलेंज है भारत का वो ये है कि पहले तो जो स्टूडेंट स्कूल में हैं उनके लिए, उनके परिवार के लिए बहुत कठिनाई की बात है कि इस आर्थिक स्थिति में वो स्टूडेंट्स को स्कूल में नहीं रख सकते। और खास करके जैसे आपने कहा, गर्ल स्टूडेंट्स, बहुत सी हैं गर्ल स्टूडेंट्स जिनको स्कूल छोड़ना पड़ रहा है क्योंकि उनके पेरेंट्स अफोर्ड नहीं कर सकते। तो आपने और भी एक बात कही, जो उनकी डिग्निटी है, जो उनका सम्मान है, कैसे रिस्पेक्टफुली उनकी मदद की जाए। क्योंकि जो मेरे एक्सपीरियंस में जो मैंने एक्सपीरियंस किया है वो ये है कि जो ये पेरेंट्स हैं, दे वांट डिग्निटी, दे वांट एज मच रिस्पेक्ट एज एनी ऑफ अस। तो उनके लिए अगर हम ये सहूलियत कर दें कि उनको इंटरेस्ट फ्री लोन दिया जा रहा है, या जैसे डॉक्टर यूनुस ने कहा और भी अगर कोई जो प्रोग्राम्स हैं, उनके लिए ये इतनी मदद की बात होगी और उनके परिवार के लिए ये इतनी बड़ी बात होगी कि वो अपने बेटे बेटियों को स्कूल में रख सकते हैं।
जी।
So Vinita Bali, social investing is also sustainable, isn't it? That's the key point. It's a sustainable way of making a difference to society. But coming back to education again, that focus. When families face terrible hardships, we've seen from the recent experience that it's the education of the girls in the family that is sacrificed first. In the long run, isn't that the most damaging to our society? Because educating girls has such a positive effect on our environment, on the environment. We see women much more active in politics, in everyday life. We've seen a change in India. So educating the girl child is probably the most important factor that will cause the biggest change in our society, right?
Dr. Roy, I couldn't agree with you more. I think education of boys and girls, and especially girls, is so critical for the future India that we want to create. And let me give you a specific example so it's not just conceptual. You know, in the several visits I've made in part of my nutrition work, etc., to schools in rural India, in tier 2, tier 3 cities, one of the things that comes across very clearly is that the mother is very clear that she will do whatever it takes to ensure that her daughter doesn't have the life that she led. Now, that mother could be working in an agricultural field, she could be coming and cooking in our homes. Whatever the mothers are doing, they are very clear that the way out of this drudgery is education, and therefore they are willing to go to any extent to send their girls to school. If you speak to the girls themselves and you look at their aspiration and you look at their ambition and you just ask any of them, what is it that they want to do? they say things like they want to serve the country, they want to become a scientist, they want to, nobody says I want to be in business and make lots of money, which by the way is quite intriguing. But they want to be teachers, they want to join the army, so it is so essential. And I think it is so unfair that at a time like this, we have to pull our students, our children out of school. And as we've already seen, the estimates are 6 million children have been pulled out of the school system in primary schools during this pandemic, of which there is a higher proportion of girls. And therefore, initiatives like this one become so critical and so important.
Yeah.
And therefore, people like us have to participate to make sure that the future of this country and the aspirations of our children are met.
Ma'am, so many small businesses have been destroyed, families have been hit by financial setbacks. The other benefit of social investment and interest-free loans is that it asks nothing of them in return, and so it removes all potentially, exploitative situations. Tell us about that, how that's a key part of making this work.
I think that's a very important part of making this work. We should not assume, and I've got first-hand experience on this, that the poor are waiting for our charity. They are not. They are waiting for our support. They are waiting for our help. They have dignity. They have respect. And they are willing to work hard. Nobody wants to sit at home and live on charity. They want jobs. I think part of what we can also do is to give them that confidence, to give them that comfort, that at this difficult time, they don't have to sacrifice the education of their children. And through these loans and through this, this whole concept of social impact investing, or whatever name we want to give to it, it is one way of keeping their dignity intact, of making sure that their children are not deprived of an education just because we're going through this hardship. And this is also a time for the rest of us to come forward and say, this is our India, this is our future, and if we don't invest in it now, what is the kind of India we're going to end up creating?
Sure. I think that's so important to remember. What is the kind of India that we really want? Vinita Bali, thank you so much for joining us. It's always wonderful speaking to you. You've of course also chaired the Governing Council of Welham's Girls' School, so your connect with education is immediate. And it gives you a real understanding of the crisis that we are in presently. Thanks once again, ma'am, for being with us this evening.
Thank you.
Now, we have a fantastic announcement that we'd like to make at this point. I think, Nidhi, the best part of this program is that there are going to be lots of, hopefully, fantastic announcements as we go forward. But right now, a Delhi-based foundation has pledged 50 lakhs towards the Rang De India Foundation for education. Now, this social investment will go towards providing interest-free loans so that kids from low-income households can keep studying. Isn't that absolutely fantastic? Well, joining us now, Samir Shashodya, the CEO of Rain Matter Foundation. In fact, Samir sent us this message just a little while back.
COVID has created extremely difficult situations and disruptions in the lives of many of our fellow citizens. At Rain Matter, even as we chase the broader agenda of climate change and ecosystem degradation, we do recognize that we need to help those who are immediately impacted by these changes that are happening to all of us. We are thankful to Rang De to allow us to extend a helping hand earlier to farmers and now to students who need to continue with their lives and with their education through these very, very challenging times. We also encourage you to pitch in and help out these students to the best of your ability.
So thank you so much, Samir Shashodya of the Rain Matter Foundation for pledging 10 lakh rupees for interest-free loans. Thank you so much. एक और अच्छी खबर है विष्णु,
Fantastic news.
बिल्कुल. तो आइए अब आगे बढ़ते हैं और अब आपको बताते हैं, वाकई में एक मैं आंकड़ा आपको बार बार दे रही हूँ, आप कहेंगे कि क्यों हम बता रहे हैं कि 50% अगर हमारे छात्र सरकारी स्कूलों में हैं तो 50% प्राइवेट स्कूल्स में जाते हैं, उसमें भी 70% ऐसे प्राइवेट स्कूल्स हैं जिनको अफोर्डेबल प्राइवेट स्कूल्स कहा जाता है। और ऐसे में आपको बताएं, दो खास मेहमान हमारे साथ जुड़ रहे हैं। पार्थ शाह हैं, जनरल सेक्रेटरी हैं नेशनल इंडिपेंडेंट स्कूल अलायंस के, और विशाल तलरेजा भी हैं, co-founder Dream a Dream के. Thank you so much Vishal for joining, and your organization Dream a Dream itself is so beautiful, the name, and I'm sure many dreams have come true. Tell us a little bit more about your organization and how it's been working on field.
Sure. Thank you for inviting me. Dream a Dream has been working with children and young people from vulnerable backgrounds, focused on helping them build life skills and social emotional competencies exactly to deal with this kind of uncertainty that we are seeing in the world right now. The pandemic has been a wake-up call, and the life skills program that we've been running for young people have helped them build capacities to respond and thrive in these uncertain times. We work with about 1 million children across the country through partnerships with state governments, helping them build the capacities to deal with uncertainty, complexity, and changes in the future.
Vishal, the challenge of ensuring children continue to get a good education, now that's a global challenge. What's being done in other countries, towards trying to figure this out? Is there something we could actually emulate here, or perhaps learn some lessons from outside?
Absolutely. I think one of the key aspects is how we could prioritize education itself. If you've seen the way countries have responded, for example, some countries have created pay package guarantees where schools or small non-profits can apply to governments for protecting salaries of their staff, of their teachers and educators. And I feel that, especially for the affordable school market, who has struggled to pay salaries of teachers and keep them on the rolls, this could be a great initiative. The second important initiative that we've seen many good countries like Finland, Estonia, New Zealand have focused on is how have we used this pandemic to focus on the well-being and social emotional competencies and mental health of the children. So not just looking at the learning loss, but really looking at the children are going through a period of high anxiety, high stress, confusion, lack of understanding of what's happening around them. In our own surveys, we saw children reaching out to us and saying, I'm scared, will my parents die because of this pandemic, and what will happen to me and my siblings when this happens? So a conscious investment in well-being, mental health and emotional health of children is something that we need to prioritize more than the learning loss. The third piece is how do we help children reintegrate? Now, as they come back into school environments, whether it's virtual or physical school environments, a big challenge for children would be that one is they've lost an entire year of learning, but they've also lost an entire year of connections and relationships. And children need to reconnect with themselves, reconnect with their friends and peers, reconnect with their teachers, and reconnect with the world around them. So how do we train teachers on one, help children heal out of the trauma that they've experienced and create meaning of how they can now move forward in this world? And these are the three initiatives I think have been very powerful to help children reintegrate into learning ecosystems.
Vishal, thank you. You've said a very important thing, that it's how important it is to actually look into the well-being of the children rather than just focusing on the education loss. We'll move ahead. We have Parth Shah, General Secretary, National Independent Schools Alliance. Thank you for joining. Lakhs of parents were sending their children to affordable private schools in the hope of giving them a good education. The pandemic has, of course, changed all of that. How bad has it got? And for not just the parents and the children, but also the affordable private schools?
As you, I think, very well pointed out, Trinity, that millions of parents have become quite destitute. And most of them who used to go to these low-fee private schools, we refer to them as budget private schools. But I would point out that they are actually community schools. These schools are started by people living in the basti, right? Appealing to the local need that they see in the basti. And therefore, these are really genuinely community schools. And if you remember, Gandhiji talked about the metaphor of beautiful tree. These are the beautiful trees, in a sense, which we have across the breadth of India. And those are the schools which actually serve the poor. Right? These are private schools for the poor, not the kind of private schools where you and I would send our children too. Right? We did a survey of these schools through the National Independent Schools Alliance, which is the alliance of the associations of these low-fee private schools across the country. We have more than about 70,000 schools as members in the alliance. And survey was done a few months ago. And we found that the school fees they have received for the last year ranges somewhere between 6% in Madhya Pradesh to about 28% of what otherwise they would have gotten for the year in Delhi. Right? So this is the situation that they are in. There is no fee coming in, understandably so, because parents obviously are not able to earn their own living, so that they're unable to pay the fees.
Absolutely.
Right? At the same time, these schools are owed by the government hundreds of crores of rupees.
Yeah.
Right? For example, Delhi government itself owes these private schools about 67 crore rupees. This is the payment, the reimbursement that was supposed to happen for the 25% seats.
Right. I just, Prannoy actually had a quick question, Parth, to Prannoy, go ahead with that. Yeah.
Parth, if I can ask you, why is this campaign so important? And how can it actually help families who can't provide a good education to their children? How can we all work towards this collectively?
I think, first of all, I want to thank Rangde and, of course, NDTV and all of you for taking on this cause. Most people see the parents who send their kids to private schools as somehow not our responsibility. Right? In some sense, half of the students who are going to private schools have been abandoned by the government. There is nothing being done for them. And this is probably the only effort that I see which is being made by Rangde and NDTV to help these parents. I would point out that many people think that if these kids don't go to private schools because they can't afford the fees, well, they will go to government schools, right? But they don't realize that that is actually quite difficult for these students to do, because most of these, even the low-fee private schools, are in English medium.
Yeah.
Now, it's true that teachers may not speak perfect English in the classroom.
Yes.
Right? It must be language, Hindi, English, both mixed in the classroom. But the textbooks are in English. They study in English. Their exams are in English. Right? And this is what they have been going through in these budget private schools.
Yeah.
Now, for them to shift to a government school, where the instruction would be in local language, whichever state that they may be in, right? It is almost impossible for them to readjust, right, for a short period of time in this situation. So I urge everyone who is listening to this program that this is the best thing we can do, is to provide self-help.
Yes.
Help the parents who are willing to help themselves, right? They are sending their kids with their own hard-earned money to these low-fee private schools to get slightly better education for themselves.
Absolutely, and I think just the point that you're making, Parth, about how making that transition it's impossible. You know, it disrupts lives, it disrupts a child's happiness at one level. It's not just financial. You know, making these transitions are often so difficult, but it's an important point, and I'm so glad that you made it. Parth Shah and Vishal Talreja, thank you so much for being with us on this program. Well, Nidhi, we've got a really wonderful guest coming up next. Ashraf Onissa joins us from the Raza School in Bengaluru. How has the pandemic made things different, Ashraf, for you in school, for you, your friends? What's changed?
I'm Ashraf Onissa from grade 9. From grade 9 from Bangalore.
Go ahead, we can hear you.
I was studying in 8th standard last year, and it was the last month of exam. We was preparing for our exams with our teachers and our friends. We were enjoying that preparation with teachers and friends. And in that, during our exam preparation, the government laid a rule that for lockdown. And in that our exams got cancelled. We felt little sad because we hard worked for our exams, and it laid. and because of exams, some students felt very happy, and who prepared well for the exams, they felt little sad because their hard work didn't give success. And in the lockdown, when we was in school, one group came as a dream and dream. These supporters, and I was in 7th standard. From 4 years I am with Dream and Dream, studying with Dream and Dream, and this is a additional class which they will show us our talent. They will show us like a mirror what talent we have and what can we do in future, and they help from their force.
Sure.
And from 4 years I was in this additional class.
Yeah.
And from starting we was having this training.
बिल्कुल अशरफ, आपकी बात समझी हमने। ड्रीमो ड्रीम ने कैसे मदद की आपकी। डॉक्टर रॉय एक सवाल पूछ रहे हैं आपसे। डॉक्टर रॉय will ask you a question.
So Ashraf, Unisa, what do you want to become when you grow up? What do you want to do in life?
Sir. I want to be a role model in life, because in my age, my friends and their families, they didn't give them to study, and I want to be a role model because I want to show them the girls can do everything if they try. They have such a courage, confident interest, they can achieve everything if they work hard. Every girl has capable of this. Each girl have some other talent in that. But we girls should get a little one chance to prove ourselves, to believe our parents that we can able to achieve everything. We are capable of.
And I'll tell you what, you already are a role model.
Right.
You're already a role model, isn't she?
Absolutely, absolutely. बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया अशरफ जुड़ने के लिए, और उम्मीद करते हैं आपके आगे के सपने तमाम पूरे हों। अब हमारे साथ बेहद खास मेहमान है उर्वशी सहानी, फाउंडिंग प्रेसिडेंट एंड सीईओ, स्टडी हॉल एजुकेशन फाउंडेशन। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया जुड़ने के लिए मैम। मैं आपसे पूछना चाहूँगी, आप एक मार्गदर्शक हैं, खास तौर से जो अफोर्डेबल प्राइवेट स्कूल्स हैं उस पर जो डिजिटल लर्निंग है, आपका क्या आंकलन है जो पैंडेमिक के दौरान किस तरह से असर हुआ है, स्पेशली खास तौर से जो हमारी लड़कियां हैं, बच्चियां हैं, उनकी पढ़ाई लिखाई में?
थैंक यू सो मच निधि, एंड कंग्रेचुलेशंस अशरफ, बहुत अच्छा बोली है। पैंडेमिक में देखिए, जैसे औरों ने भी कहा कि डिजिटल डिवाइड बिल्कुल सामने साक्षात होकर खड़ा। सबने कहा कि ऑनलाइन एजुकेशन चाहिए, लेकिन हमारे इतने लोग हैं, इतने लोग ज्यादातर जिनके पास लाइफ है ही नहीं, तो किसके ऑन जाएं? खासकर लड़कियों के पास, क्योंकि लड़कियों के पास ये हुआ कि अगर घर में डिवाइस है गरीब बच्चियों के पास, तो फिर उनके पास एक है, वो भी पिता के पास, और ज्यादातर डेटा के भी पैसे नहीं हैं, तो क्या करें? तो हम लोगों ने क्या किया? सबसे पहले लड़कियों के साथ जुड़ाव बनाया, फोन किया, अगर पापा ने उठाया तो कहा, अरे भाई साहब आप कैसे हैं, कैसी है, और आपकी जॉब वॉब है, कैसा है, घर में क्या पूछा, तो बड़े खुश हो गए। उसके बाद कहा घर में बेटियां होगी, जरा हम थोड़ी देर से पढ़ाई करेंगे। और क्या हुआ कि हमारा पापा लोगों के साथ बहुत अच्छा रिश्ता बन गया, ताकि उसके बाद भी अब वो और प्रोत्साहित करते हैं अपनी बच्चियों को। कुछ बच्चियों को गांव ले गए, उसमें ये डर रहता है कि उनकी शादियां कर देंगे, कि अब स्कूल नहीं जा रही है, छोटी खासकर एडोलेसेंट शादियां कर, तो हमने उनसे फिर चिट्ठियां लिख के उनसे संपर्क किया, पोस्ट कार्ड, और उससे भी बहुत बच्चे जुड़े रहे और फिर अब वापस आ गए। लेकिन सबसे पहले हमने ये कोशिश की कि बच्चियों के साथ जुड़ाव बना रहे, उनके परिवारों के साथ जुड़ाव, जो सरकार की स्कीम्स उससे भी उनको जोड़ा। फिर हमने क्या किया कि स्मार्टफोन की एक लाइब्रेरी बना दी, और बच्चियों जो बड़ी बच्चियां थी कहा एक स्मार्टफोन देंगे, डेटा भी देंगे, बेटा आप 5-6 बच्चों के साथ में जोड़ो, अपने घर के 2-3 बहनें हैं, एक तो और भी, और उनको टीचर से जुड़वाया। गाँव में भी किया, शहरों में भी किया, उससे भी बहुत असर हुआ। और ये कोशिश की दीप से दीप जले, कि जिसके पास डिवाइस है वो उसको शेयर करे। अब सबको एक साथ तो ना दे सकते, लेकिन जिसके पास थी, ग्रुप लर्निंग द्वारा हमने पढ़ाई को जारी रखा। जैसे विशाल कह रहे कि उनकी इमोशनल वेलबींग को मद्देनजर रखते हुए बहुत सी उनसे उसके बारे में हमेशा बातचीत की रहती, हेल्पलाइन की कि डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस तो नहीं हो रहा, भाइयों को सिखाया कि बेटा घर में कोई बहन पिटनी नहीं चाहिए, माँ पिटनी नहीं चाहिए, हुआ तो हमसे संपर्क करो, हम आपकी हेल्प करेंगे। और फिर सरकार के द्वारा 1090 के द्वारा हमारी सुरक्षा संस्था है, उसके द्वारा उनकी सहायता हम लोग करते रहे। राशन की जरूरत थी तो राशन भी पहुंचाते रहे।
बिल्कुल सरकार जी, जो आपने ये स्मार्टफोन लाइब्रेरी की बात भी की है, ये भी एक बहुत बढ़िया संदेश, एक जरिया लोग अगर सुन रहे होंगे तो समझ पाएंगे, अपने इलाकों में लागू करना बड़ा आसान होगा। डॉक्टर रॉय हैज अ क्वेश्चन फॉर यू, उर्वशी।
जी जी।
Mrs. Urvashi Sani, there are bound to be larger consequences to this impact that you're talking about, the impact on young girls. Tell us about that, because that is what we should be most worried about and most focused on, right?
Absolutely. See, it is so possible for girls to drop out right now because they are the first ones to be targeted. If the job has gone, there is no money, then they are the first ones who are pulled out of school. And then the alternative for parents becomes, let's get them married off as quickly as possible. Secondly, because fathers have lost their job, there is more frustration, domestic violence and sexual violence within families.
All right. Sorry, we seem to have lost the line there, but I think that message so clear, and it's certainly something that we'll continue reflecting on in the course of this program as well. But at this stage, we just really want to introduce two very special people without whom this program wouldn't have been possible at all. Smita Ram, co-founder and CEO of Rangde, and Ram NK, the co-founder and director of Rangde. We've spoken about not just this campaign, but the one that we've had in the past as well extensively. And it's just been wonderful speaking and working with both of you. It's great to have you back on NDTV. You've successfully attracted social investments for farmers, and we did an entire program on that, for India's distressed artisans and weavers, and now school children from low-income households to keep their education going. Why have you chosen education now as a key focus area?
I think, Vishnu, the answer is very clear, because livelihoods only help address the here and now situation of our families. So our livelihood loans take care of it. I think what education can do is it's a game changer. It can uplift an entire generation out of poverty. So this is really for the future generations, and that's really why we are focusing on education.
Ram, do you think this model of social investment has now taken root in India, that people have accepted it at last? The fact that people have now seen how it actually works, that you've been so transparent, and that it does in fact do a lot of good. It has a huge impact. That in itself will help it grow into an even bigger movement and have even a bigger impact. Social investment really is the key to our future.
I think we've just got started. We still have a long way to go because it would take a while for people to understand that this is an investment which actually comes back, and they could reinvest and help so many others. So it's something which they will have to experience it, and I think we have just got started, and there's a long way to go until this becomes a movement, because this is a lot more sustainable way of making a difference.
Of course, every bit counts, will count, whosoever जो यहाँ पर योगदान देंगे अपना। मैं आपसे समझना चाह रही थी कि अगर कोई इस मुहिम से जुड़ना चाहता है, राशि बहुत बड़ी होने की ज़रूरत नहीं है। आप जब से कल बात हो रही थी, आप हमें बता रहे थे किस तरह से जो प्राइवेट स्कूल्स हैं कुछ ज़्यादातर, उसमें 1000 रुपये महीना की फ़ीस है। तो थोड़ा हमारे दर्शकों को एक्सप्लेन करिए कि वो जितना भी करके जुड़ सकेंगे वो अच्छा रहेगा योगदान।
बिल्कुल। सो बिकॉज 1000 एक महीने की फीस हो सकती है, और उससे भी कम होती है काफ़ी स्कूलों में। तो अगर आप 10,000 मान के चलें, या 1000 भी अगर आप दें, तो एक महीने की फीस वो पे कर पाएंगे। और इसमें खास बात यह है कि आपके पास ज़्यादा मनी की ज़रूरत नहीं है। अगर आप एक एक चेंज, बदलाव लाना चाहते हैं, और वो अक्सर ये होता है कि हम लोग टालते हैं इन चीज़ों को कि नहीं, अगर हमारे पास थोड़े और पैसे हो जाएं फिर हम इस पे हम सोचेंगे इसके बारे में। और हमारे प्लेटफॉर्म में खास करके तो 100 रुपये से आप शुरू कर सकते हैं। तो मेरा ये मानना है कि हम इसको टालें ना, और ये एंड में ये एक लोन है, और ये लोन पेरेंट्स के जरिए स्कूल को जाएगा और फिर ये वापस भी आएगा। तो बिल्कुल आपने जो बिल्कुल सही कहा है कि आई थिंक वी शुड जस्ट गेट स्टार्टेड ऑन दिस।
बिल्कुल, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद कि आप दोनों जुड़े। और एक बात यहाँ पर और मेंशन कर दें कि जो पिछली मुहिम में किसानों को जो लोन दिया गया था, पूरा लोन रंग दे ने एक तरह से वापस किया है। तो ये अपने आप में एक बहुत बड़ी राहत की खबर है कि किस तरह से जब आप लोन लेते हैं ब्याज मुक्त ये पूरा लोन होगा। और अब एक कहानी, एक रिपोर्ट हम आपको दिखाना चाह रहे हैं बेंगलुरु से। ड्रीम हमने वो संस्था का पहले भी इस कार्यक्रम में जिक्र किया है, कैसे उन्होंने इन बच्चों के जो सपने हैं उनको साकार किया है। देखिए ग्राउंड रिपोर्ट।
There is potential in all of us. Sometimes little help is needed to develop that potential. We're at the Mount Everest English School in Bengaluru, just off Mysuru Road. And we're going to meet a goalkeeper with a goal and a budding businesswoman. The focus of school education may be the syllabus, what goes on inside these classes. But sometimes it is what children learn outside the regular classes that really makes a difference. Once a week, Dream a Dream comes to this school to help the young students realize and achieve their dreams. Divya is a 15-year-old 10th standard student. Her father Ranganath, an auto driver, drops her at school every day. Her mother Netravati is a tailor.
I learned so many things in the Dream a Dream. Life skill, helping nature, solving the problems. My dream is I want to become a doctor. In 2020 the COVID is come and so many people have died. I think I will become doctor and help so many people taking without cost.
Manya is 16 and this 10th standard student enjoys her Dream a Dream sessions. Her father is a driver. Her mother works in building.
I learn about my talent, skills, self-confidence, confidence, everything. How to behave, how to feel, how to think and everything.
Their facilitator is Nagaraj, who says his life as a child was turned around by the Dream a Dream program and who is happy to share what he learnt.
When I see that back 3 years past, so when I finished this 3 years journey, I feel that happy to proud myself. When I try to give something what I know for young people, they learned and they're going for their lives.
We hope the children get the help they need to see their dreams come true. With DM Kumar, Maya Sharma in Bengaluru for NDTV.
And as promised, we have even more good news on this program. 3 anonymous pledges coming in at this point. 2 are of 10 lakh rupees each. One is of 7 lakhs. So that's a further total investment that have come in over here, and many more children whose education can continue uninterrupted. Thank you very much for these 3 anonymous social investors. Well, in this part of the program, we'd like to focus on how social investments work, how there is accountability in the funds that you contribute. It's not just that you bring in the funds and it disappears, not at all. You will know where your money goes. How peer-to-peer lending is a reality, and the role of Rangde, because at the end of the day, it is a really small contribution, but one that can transform the lives of so many. I am a Rangde social investor. I'm able to invest in students across India with just a few clicks, but I'm able to stay connected and track the impact of my social investment. Through my social investments, I've been able to support parents in distress and experience their strength and resilience. I'm doing my bit to get children back to school. I am a proud social investor, and I invite you to join me.
years, and we've seen something like 20 billion go into responsible investing this year. So there is most certainly an appetite and mission-aligned investors who are looking to align their investments with their own values. And I think they've seen that there is a huge opportunity for them to actually, as well as derive their positive, investment returns, make a huge influence with regards to solving a lot of the world's most, pressing issues. And as a financial institution and as a social investor, it is our responsibility to make sure that this capital, finds its way to, the most worthy causes.
Mr. Chaudhary, you just mentioned how education is close to your heart. How important is this sector, and why do you tell us why Green Arc is supporting Randev's education campaign?
Right. Well, again, when you look at what the COVID crisis has done, not just in India, but pretty much in every developing market across the world, it's a classic case of a split recovery. So what you have is, you have white collar workers like most of us here, right? I mean, we classify ourselves as white collar workers. Our lives have been inconvenienced, but not disrupted by the pandemic. When you look at blue collar workers and when you look at their children, I mean, the impact has been disproportionate. So it is our role as investors to soften this, to mitigate this, and to see how we address and how we allocate capital into specifically education. Why education? I mean, there are many studies around this, but 1 year of lost education for a child typically leads to about, I would say, a 5-year gap in earnings between that child and a comparable kid who's continued their education. So it is not just important to finance it. The entire assistance has to be in a timely manner.
Sure.
I.e. allow for the continuity, because even a drop of one semester is very, very harmful for a teenager.
Yep.
Right? So this is why it's a priority for us. And we think that, for any country, right, and specifically India, to come out of this crisis and strong, we have to focus on this as a priority. India is a young nation, right? Our average median age is still very young.
Yep.
We need to invest in our human capital for the country to prosper and to grow.
Absolutely. And Bikram and Meeta, before we thank you for for joining in on this show, we must thank you also for a very, very special announcement. You've pledged 1 crore that will provide interest-free loans and help sustain the education of countless young students. Thank you for investing, in our collective futures, in fellow Indians, for investing in India's future. Thank you so much for joining us. That's just such a wonderful contribution. Thank you so much indeed.
थैंक यू। अब हमारे साथ बेहद खास मेहमान है चेतना गाला सिन्हा, फाउंडर है मन देश महिला सहकारी बैंक के। एंड बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद माला जी, आप जुड़ी हैं। चेतना जी, ये मुझे सुनकर ही बड़ा, जब मैंने पढ़ा, बहुत सुकून हुआ किस तरह से कि महिला सहकारी बैंक हमारे ग्रामीण इलाकों में चलता है। आप लोग वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमिक फोरम दावोस में गए भी, बहुत अच्छा लगा, वहाँ पे आपने भागीदारी की। मैम, जो ये हमारे ग्रामीण और शहरी इलाकों में खाई सी है, खास तौर से महिलाएं जो एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप करना चाहती हैं, उनको बहुत मुश्किल हालात में सामना करना पड़ता है। आप एक बैंकर भी रही हैं, उस हालात से किस तरह से आपको लगता है कि जब हम ये समाज में अपना सामाजिक निवेश करते हैं, एक महिलाओं को मदद भी मिलती है, उनकी जो गरिमा है, उनकी इज्जत भी बनी रहती है, और जो शहरों और ग्रामीण इलाकों में जो खाई, एक पुल भी बनता है। ये
सबसे पहले तो मैं खुश हूँ कि आज मैं अपने अनुभव यहाँ शेयर करती हूँ, और मैं ये भी खुश हूँ कि आज रंगदेव जैसे प्लेटफॉर्म मिला है एनडीटीवी पे। ये बात महिला की बैंक की बात करनी हो, मानदेशी महिला बैंक की, तो मैं ये कहना चाहूंगी कि जब ये बैंक कोई बाहर के सपोर्ट से नहीं खड़ी, यहाँ शुरू में जब महिलाएं बचत करना चाहती थी और उनको बचत की कोई उपलब्धि बैंकों की अपॉर्चुनिटी नहीं मिल रही थी, बैंकें कह रही थी महिलाओं को कि आप हमारे लिए अफोर्डेबल क्लाइंट्स नहीं है, तब शुरू में मेरे साथ 15 महिलाएं जुड़ी और कहा कि क्यों नहीं हम अपनी बैंक खड़ी करें, कोई बाहर सपोर्ट नहीं, महिलाओं की पूंजी, महिलाओं की बचत और महिलाओं का कर्ज, ये करके हमने प्रपोजल दिया। किसी ने माना नहीं कि ये पढ़ी लिखी भी नहीं है महिलाएं, इनको लाइसेंस भी मिलेगा, लेकिन हमारी महिलाओं का आत्मविश्वास कम नहीं हुआ। इसी से मैं ये कहना चाहती हूँ कि गांव में बहुत लोगों को विश्वास नहीं होता है कि गांव की महिलाएं अगर तय कर लें तो वो अपने विषय पे डटे रहती हैं। और मुझे अभिमान है ये कहने का कि हमारी महिलाओं को आज हमारी महिला बैंक ने लगभग करीबन 25 साल में 400 करोड़ से ज्यादा लोन ली है और उसको रीपे किया है। और मानदेशी फाउंडेशन और बैंक ने मिलकर करीबन 6 लाख महिलाओं को उद्योजक बनाया है। ये ऐसे ही नहीं होता। ये महिलाएं तो स्कूल में भी नहीं गई, इन महिलाओं को कोई अपॉर्चुनिटी मिली नहीं, लेकिन उनका आत्मविश्वास, वो डटी रही और उन्होंने ये प्रूव करके दिखाया कि हमको बाहरी मदद नहीं मिलेगी तब भी हम बैंक खड़ा कर सकते हैं, हम पूंजी लगा सकते हैं। छोटी छोटी पूंजी लाखों महिलाओं ने लगाई। और
Chetna ji, now you founded the Mandeshi Foundation and the Mahila Sahakari Bank, and this works towards economic empowerment of rural women. Tell us, from your experience, the sense of accountability that loans like this create, because it's not a handout or a donation, it's a loan. So there's a sense of responsibility. People have to return these funds. It's been given for a purpose, and that purpose has to be fulfilled.
So the one thing I would just like to see when I see this, and when I watched Smita and Ram and Rangde, I know them very well. I strongly believe that when we are delivering the loan, or when the institution which is giving loan, one thing they have to understand is that listen to people, what they listen to them, make your solution simple. That is another. Create the products based on the cash flows of the poor people. For example, if you want to give a loan to street vendors, you cannot have an EMI. You have to create a loan in such a way that daily repayment is possible. So when the accountability will come, when the person who gives the loan, when the lender has the confidence and trust in the borrower, then the accountability will come. That is one. And the second is that borrower should know that you are going to stand with me. Because it's a first time borrowing, it's also not very easy. There can be a problem. But if borrower knows that, then borrower genuinely will come and say that I cannot repay the loan. Help me out. And we have to be ready for that also. Because it's not a one-time solution.
No.
You have hand-holding.
And the solution has to be flexible, as you mentioned. Loans cannot be of a particular design. The design needs to change to the different context and the type of the borrower. Thank you so much, very much. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being with us today.
Thank you.
थैंक यू सो मच। और वाकई में सुन के विष्णु 25 साल में 6 लाख महिलाओं की मदद हुई है, वो भी ग्रामीण भारत के इलाकों में। बहुत ही अच्छा लगा ये सुनकर जो ये सहकारी बैंक चल रहा है। बहरहाल तो वो समय आ गया है जब हम ये समझने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि भाई क्यों हमें मदद करनी है, क्या हमें मदद करनी है। हमारे साथ वी हैव आलोक केजरीवाल, को-फाउंडर CEO ऑफ गेम्स टू विन। Alok, I'd like to ask you, you are someone with a very successful track record in the digital space. How can we leverage technology and digital platforms to build trust?
The foundation of technology has been built on trust. I mean, if you look at the way we engage with most of our platforms today, no one, met us and introduced us to WhatsApp or to Facebook or to email, but we use it like Google. We just use it with complete blind trust. And that's the power of technology, because it's so personal and it's so easy and it's non-obtrusive. We immediately trust it because it helps us. So it is a given that, such a phenomenal idea of helping people in what we call, just sitting from my phone and just sending money to people who really need it. It has to be enabled by technology. I run a games company, and people in Indonesia and Mexico and Turkey pay us money to buy a small car or buy a wheel or a dress. I mean, if they can trust us with their money to buy small little trinkets in a game, the least I can do as an Indian entrepreneur is to give my farmers money to live their life, right? I mean, it's unbelievable.
Alok, why do you think social investing is so important now? What would you say to people watching this, to urge them or to give them an idea why they need to participate in this campaign?
That's a great question, and I must answer that with a simple, fact of life. We all love instant gratification. The greatest thing we love is we can't live without it, right? That's what internet, social media, that's what your WhatsApp and Instagram is. You put up a post and you quickly look at it to say, do I get likes? Now, if you can be so obsessed by a LinkedIn like or a comment or Facebook, at the least you can do is quickly start helping people on platforms like these, and the gratification you will get is 1,000,000x more than those small little things we do. And the other thing is because of the virality, right? The beauty of technology and platforms like these, the reason we have to do it is because it's viral. I will not sit quiet. I'm on this show because I'm so excited. I could not believe I could do that. That's what I told Ram and Smita, that, where the hell was I before this? Why didn't you tell me this earlier? So if there are 100 Aloks, there'll be 1,000,000 more who will spread. That's the beauty of viral platforms.
I just think it's fantastic, though, Alok, that you are on this evening, and thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for pledging 21 lakhs for interest-free loans for young students from low-income households. It's so important that you are investing in India's future with this pledge, as are so many others on this program. Thanks so much indeed.
Thank you so much.
Well, Adil Hussain, the actor, is somebody who joins us now. Education is an important cause for him. Education has been disrupted for so many children across India, whether it is because they've had to withdraw from schools for a number of reasons, or whether it's because they have no way to access online learning. Why is it so important to ensure that these children, especially from low-income households, get back to learning really quickly?
I think this is a responsibility of every country or every society, that we do not leave behind amazing talents, those who are born in rural areas or in the areas where economy hasn't yet sort of gone in and lifted them up. I come from a very, very poor background myself. My father was a teacher. My father could not have afforded my education unless it was free. Right from primary school till I came to National School of Drama and got a scholarship to study acting in London. And there are so many other examples like that, in our film industry itself. Nawazuddin, Pankaj Tripathi, Irfan Khan, and you name it. There are so many of them, and there could be thousands of Pankaj Tripathis and Adils, and those who are aspiring to go for higher studies in different fields according to their inner calling. And I think the initiative by Rang De is one of the most important initiative, because unless we educate the most important section, that means that the larger section of our society is not being able to support themselves to go for education and secondary and higher secondary and higher education.
Adil, you were mentioning about how your father was a teacher himself, and your link to education from obviously a very young age. What have you seen education do to the many students that you have interacted with?
Up the horizon, it gives you a greater and larger worldview. It makes you a wider and larger person. It helps you to accommodate other ideas. It makes you a person who would understand the other. Overall, I think it helped me to become who I am today. And today what I am is not about how famous I am or what I'm able to do, but as a human being, that I have become a contributing member of the citizenry of the nation. I had been being able to help people to empathize through my art, and all the other students that I know, they are also, they have become a creative member of the nation. They have become the creative member of the country. Was the only thing he wanted is that his sons to be educated. And he, of course, dreamt a different dream for me. He wanted me to become a professor in English, to study literature, to study English literature and Assamese literature and Bengali literature, in order to understand what humanity means, what humanism means, what country means, what patriotism means, what is the purpose of life and all that. And he could not do it financially, but he made sure that we were given the right values and he practiced absolutely strict principles in terms of his honesty and dedication to make sure that he gives us those values. So I think that what Rang De is doing is very unique and utterly important, and we must all support this as much as we can in order to give interest-free loans to the aspiring students, those who come from downtrodden society and economically backward class.
Adil, wonderful for sharing those thoughts on the value of education, what you've seen from a young age with your father being a teacher. We're joined by Nimesh Sumati, co-founder of Caring Friends. Pranoy mentioned earlier on the program about the importance of sustainable philanthropy. Would you agree that social investing or social investments are very much the way to go forward, to take this entire concept ahead?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you, NDTV and Rang De first. I think that social sustainability is very, very important because I've seen across the country that the poor has two capital, the poor people. One is their self-respect and second is dignity. I think with charity and philanthropy, we should not dilute it, but uplift them. You have to strengthen this in them. So these school loans, interest-free loans for the fees is a very good step in that, and that is the reason I support it. And such other interventions that we do. So philanthropy and charity has to evolve now. We have to now do constructive charity rather than thus, free food, free education, free health and everything. It needs to be more constructive now.
बिल्कुल सुमति जी, आपने एक निजी सम्मान की बात की है. जिस तरह से हम हमेशा अक्सर कॉर्पोरेट सोशल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी की बात करते हैं, लेकिन अब इंडिविजुअल सोशल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी भी काफ़ी अहम है कि जो पावर ऑफ वन, कि हम भी अपना एक इंडिविजुअल, एक सदस्य योगदान कर सकते हैं, जिससे कि एक बदलाव आए, वो अपने भी एक छोटा सा कदम काफ़ी कारगर हो.
देखिए, मैं हमेशा बोलता हूँ कि हमारा देश करोड़ों रायचन से भरा हुआ है. रायचन की कोई कमी नहीं देश में. ज्ञानचंद की भी कमी नहीं है. ज्ञान देने वाले भी बहुत है. और मूलचंद की भी कमी नहीं है. पैसे देने वाले भी बहुत है, बट कमी है तो करमचंद की. Each individual needs to do their own duty first and then preach, or rather just sitting in the drawing rooms and dining table complain about the country and the government and everything. I think if we start doing our bit, we become more positive and we become more creative and also meaningful, meaning to our life. I think I am the biggest beneficiary when I start. मैंने जब ये शुरू किया तो सबसे बड़ा फायदा मुझे ही हुआ है. तो ये रायचंद, ज्ञानचंद और मूलचंद को छोड़ के हमारी करमचंद की जरूरत है, जो स्मिता और राम है हमारे. वी नीड मोर स्मिता देन राम. बहुत ज्यादा चाहिए हमें. ये बहुत हो गया. बाकी सब चार चांद बोलते हैं ना. एक प्रोजेक्ट को अच्छे से करने के लिए 4 चांद चाहिए.
जी, that's true.
क्या इम्पोर्टेंट है.
बिल्कुल, आप इस मुहिम में
करमचंद सही हो.
जी.
अगर करमचंद सही हो तो बाकी 3 उसके पीछे दौड़ते हैं, जैसे मैं उसके पीछे दौड़.
बिल्कुल, आपने इस मुहिम में 4 चांद लगा दिए, हम देख रहे हैं. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. आप जाने से पहले बता दें आपको कि निमेश सुमिति जी ने केयरिंग फ्रेंड्स फॉर एन एक्सट्रीमली जेनरस सोशल इन्वेस्टमेंट 1 करोड़ रुपए दिया है उन्होंने रंग दे इंडिया के इस मुहिम को.
बहुत पूरे समूह से हमारे
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. और ये हम आपको बता दें अपने दर्शकों को कि जो भी आप इन्वेस्टमेंट यहाँ पे अभी कर रहे हैं, रंग दे फाउंडेशन पे जाके आप ट्रैक कर सकते हैं. ये इंटरेस्ट मुक्त लोन होगा. और बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. और विष्णु, एक बहुत बड़ी खबर बता दें कि अब इस समय 3.5 करोड़ 3.5 करोड़ इस समय रंग दे की टीम के पास पहुंच गए हैं. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, तहे दिल से धन्यवाद जिन लोगों ने बच्चों की शिक्षा के लिए, जो एक बहुत ऐसे परिवारों से आ रहे हैं जो अपनी शिक्षा अफोर्ड नहीं कर पा रहे. बहुत बहुत बड़ा धन्यवाद है. बहुत धन्यवाद इसके लिए. अब हमारे साथ बेहद खास मेहमान है राजीव कपूर, वाइस प्रेसिडेंट फाइनेंस एंड बैंगलोर साइट लीडर फिनास्ट्रा. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद राजीव जुड़ने के लिए. एंड फिनास्ट्रा बिलीव्स दैट द फ्यूचर ऑफ फाइनेंस इज ओपन. मैं आपसे जानना चाहूंगी कि आप लोग रंग दे की मुहिम को किस तरह से आंक रहे हैं, और खास तौर से जो फिनेस्ट्रा है इस मुहिम को जो मदद करेगा, इसका व्यापक असर क्या है?
निधि, बहुत ही अहम सवाल पूछा आपने. रंग दे और फिनेस्ट्रा के बीच हमारी बहुत ही स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप है. आज से नहीं है, 7-8 साल से। और हम लोग ने साथ में हाथ करके आगे बढ़ते गए हैं। अलग अलग कार्यक्रम हमने अलग अलग साल में किए हैं। एक साल हमने फाइनेंशियल लिटरेसी पे किया था, एक साल हमने अनबैंक पे किया था, एक साल हमने विमेन एंटरप्रेन्योर को सपोर्ट करने के लिए माइक्रो फाइनेंस लोन किए थे। तो अलग अलग नए जो कार्यक्रम लाते हैं स्मिता और राम, we are really fortunate that we've got the Karamchands as we just heard them. And again, that's what really brings the satisfaction of being able to serve the community where we come from. और इस तरह के प्रोग्राम हम आगे भी करते रहेंगे। एंड रंगदे के साथ हमारा जो एसोसिएशन है हमारे पर्पस के साथ जुड़ा है, जो आपने पहले ही बोला, the future of finance is open, and that is what we really want to also bring about in the society that we are in.
Rajiv, tell us a little bit more about the model of peer-to-peer lending. How is it so effective, particularly in the context of making social investments?
So again, I think that's a great question. Look, people have always wanted to do good for the society. And that comes from the folks who really want to help. Many a times they really don't know how to help. And that peer-to-peer lending platform or an agency like Rangde facilitates that. And again, when we really look at, if you really just kind of told the amount just before I came online of around 3.5 crores, yes. This is what people across the country or across the world who are seeing this have got rallied in the last 1 hour, 20 minutes. Now, that's the power of people, and you need a channel to channelize that to the right people.
Right.
Which is where if you get platforms like Rangde, people who are really doing this, who have shown this as a track record, whether we look at the farmers issue that we took earlier, whether it's about the banking of the unbanked, financial literacy, I think there's a credibility angle also that comes into play. So platform, credibility, you would have a lot of people who would like to do in whatever way they can contribute, small or big, to really then help, in this case, educating the young population.
Yeah. You know, there's more fantastic news which we can share with our viewers. Mr. Kapoor has pledged 25 lakhs as a social investment for education. Thank you so much to you and Finastra for actually doing that. It's just fantastic news to be hearing that. So that 3.5 crores has actually gone up now. And, you know, we hope to raise a lot more funds for this cause over the next, 40 minutes or so.
Yeah.
Well, Sandeep Rai, Chief of City Operations of Teach for India, joins us. Mr. Rai, how have the schools, both government schools and affordable private schools that Teach for India works with, been impacted by this pandemic?
Yeah, so we at Teach for India serve about 32,000 low-income students, and so we work with about 270 schools. So we've been able to see a lot of this quite up close over the past year. And this pandemic, for the kids that we serve, but also for the kids across the country, it's been devastating. The United Nations predicts that we will see the biggest dropout this year that we've seen in more than 3 decades. And when you think about that, right, we have 1.5 million schools in India. They're serving about 320 million kids, and 70% of those kids are actually considered poor. And a little more than 12 months ago, those 1.5 million schools and the 320 million kids they serve, they just shut down. Yeah. And as we often do, we saw 2 different stories. For kids of high-income backgrounds, for kids of wealth, schools adapted. Yeah. Right? They went online, started teaching through Zoom. Kids were sent textbooks. Kids were given devices. Yeah. But for kids from low-income backgrounds, well, that adaptation happens.
Yeah. Sandeep, they didn't have it. Yeah, it's a crisis-like situation. How do you see credit playing a role in the current situation?
Yeah, so a large part of what happened basically has to do with affordable private schools. You know, exacerbating the issue is that India is unique. Affordable private schools actually serve between 35 to 50% of kids in the country. And most of these schools are trying to do an honest job of giving kids an education. And so when this pandemic hit, they stopped paying teachers. And as a result, they told kids that when schools do reopen, they just can't attend. So now in millions of schools across the country, we have a stalemate. Kids can't get back into schools. There are a few things that are, here's where credit comes in. First of all, we have to reopen schools. And as we reopen schools, we just have to vaccinate teachers. If we don't do that, nothing will move. But once we are able to do that, and once we are able to vaccinate teachers, that's where credit can really play a big role. Because for a large number of these affordable private schools, you just have kids that aren't able to basically get back in because their parent aren't able to pay the tuitions.
Right.
So if we're able to figure out money in the hands of these parents without charging high interest rates, then you can help these families reprioritize education in ways that they have in the past several decades.
बिल्कुल संदीप, बिल्कुल बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद जुड़ने के लिए। आपने हमें अंतर्राष्ट्रीय समुदाय में जो वहाँ पर हालात है वो भी आपने हमें बताए और वैक्सीनेशन की बात की। हालांकि अभी हमारे बच्चों के लिए खुला नहीं है, लेकिन वाकई में जो वैक्सीनेशन है वो भी एक अहम कड़ी है जिस पर धीरे धीरे आगे बढ़ा जाएगा देश में। बहरहाल एक और अब हम उस पड़ाव पे आ गए अपने इस कार्यक्रम में कि जो बच्चों की पढ़ाई का नुकसान अब तक हुआ है उसकी भरपाई कैसे हो। कुशाल चक्रवर्ती इज विद अस नाउ, फाउंडर लोटस पेटल फाउंडेशन। कुशाल, मैं आपसे ये समझना चाहूँगी कि आपने अपना कॉर्पोरेट करियर छोड़ा है और एजुकेशन सेक्टर में एक शुरुआत की। आपने शुरुआत लोटस पेटल फाउंडेशन की जब की, क्या मन में विचार थे, क्या सोच थे?
So I believe that education, quality education, healthcare and nutrition is something which every child deserves. And I got it because I was fortunate to be born in a family which could afford all this, and that ultimately led me to have a good corporate career with a comfortable life. But there are millions of children in our country who don't have access to quality education, healthcare and nutrition. So I felt that, I should be doing something about this. Of course, I can't change the life of millions of children, but at least I could do something for the children who were there in my neighborhood, the children living in the neighboring slums. And that's how I decided to start Lotus Petal Foundation, to provide quality education, healthcare and nutrition to these kids. It started with just 6 children in one room in a shopping arcade near my home. And now it has grown to over 1,000 children. And we have who are studying in our schools. And some of them have graduated and gone into professions. Some are studying in medical, some are working in good multinational companies. And that, I think, is a big, big impact because it helps them to come out of the cycle of poverty once and forever.
Sure.
And of course, there is a large amount of personal fulfillment one feels when you help others. I mean, at least from my experience, I can say that there is no greater joy than helping someone who needs it and to see that person use that to get ahead in life.
Yeah. Mr. Chakravarti, as someone who works on the ground, what in your view is the urgent need for Rang De India, this and what they try and spread, this campaign and providing interest-free loans for education? Why is this model so important?
This is very important because it brings a contribution from the beneficiary as well. So the beneficiary is also putting in a contribution in terms of taking a loan. There is a donor, of course, who is providing a large amount of funding for the education. There is a non-profit partner involved, and all three are contributing. So when all stakeholders contribute to it, there is, of course, a sense of confidence. Plus, it is very important for the children whose parents are taking loans and sending them to schools. They understand the meaning of credit. They understand how money works and how it can create value. And that is something which will hold them really good once they complete their education, because they have to work for another 50, 60 years. And the understanding of money is very fundamental to that. Plus, when the beneficiary is also contributing, even if it is a small amount of money based on their own effort, it also gives dignity to them. And giving with dignity, I think, is really, really important for the success of these children.
खुशहाल, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद जुड़ने के लिए, और आपके इस कदम की सराहना करनी चाहिए कि जिस तरह से आपने अपनी एक अच्छी नौकरी छोड़कर बच्चों की शिक्षा के लिए अपना जीवन लगाया। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। और अब दिल्ली से एक कहानी उस बच्चे की जिसके पिता की कोरोना के दौरान नौकरी चली गई। 6 महीने तक तो स्कूल ने जो फीस थी इस बच्चे की वो माफ़ कर दी, लेकिन उसके बाद स्कूल ने भी हाथ खड़े कर दिए। देखिए ये रिपोर्ट।
The after effects of the COVID-induced lockdown and the ongoing pandemic continues to impact low-income households even today. For 34-year-old Yadram, losing his job amid the pandemic has made it difficult to make ends meet for his family, and not being able to afford his daughter's education has been the worst blow of all.
पहले तो कोविड से पहले बहुत सही था, जिसमें हम अच्छा कमा भी रहे थे और खा भी रहे थे, और बच्चे की फीस भी पे कर रहा था मैं बिल्कुल। फिर जब कोविड आया, जब कोविड आने के बाद थोड़ा हालात ऐसे हो गए कि मैं ना बच्चे की फीस भर पा रहा था, ना कुछ कर पा रहा था।
A few kilometers away from Lavanya's home is Hari Vidya Bhavan, a private budget school where she was enrolled for a year. It's not just Lavanya's family. Even the school is facing a huge loss because of this last year.
When the lockdown was, extended, a lot of parents lost their jobs, and even as a school, we were not receiving fees at all. We lost around 600 kids in the COVID time.
But it was the school that ensured Lavanya is brought back into the system, despite the blow it was facing due to the COVID crisis.
मैंने ट्रस्टी से बात की सर से, उनके जो भी थे, उन्होंने 6 मंथ की फीस माफ़ कर दी थी। उन्होंने कहा 6 मंथ की आप पे कर दीजिए आप। मैंने कहा ठीक है सर।
Lavanya's father lost his job during the COVID time. So we kept on keeping contact with him. So then he finally came I asked him simply that, if we can help out something, help you out. So we gave him a discount. We waived off his fees by 6 months, and, we got the child back into the system.
5-year-old Lavanya dreams of becoming a doctor one day, but financial distress has led to a setback in the early stages of her education.
मैं स्कूल जाना बहुत मिस करती हूँ। मैं बड़ी होकर डॉक्टर बनना चाहती हूँ।
Well, joining us now, Atul Singhal. He's the founder and CEO of Scriptbox. Thank you so much for joining us on this program. Now, we've been hearing about the power of micro lending in helping people becoming self-reliant. Tell us about the power of social peer-to-peer lending, social investing, as we call it, where these investments, which could be small sums of money from many, can help break traditional barriers in order to access credit.
Thank you, Bhaskar, and good evening to all of you. First and foremost, I will believe, Lavanya, you will become a doctor. हमारी यही प्रार्थना है कि आप कि सारे एम्बिशन पूरे हो. Low income should not mean low ambition. Low income should not mean low opportunity. From a social enterprise perspective, there's a huge multiplier effect for entrepreneurship. God has been very kind to us. We've been entrepreneurs. And because we're able to create jobs, because we're able to sort of mentor other entrepreneurs, it leads to growth. I have a little bit of experience in microlending. And we know that the moment you're able to finance any business, or you're able to finance, they're able to provide jobs, they're able to provide self-reliance, they're able to provide respect. And those are really important for people to grow. Now you combine that with the power of technology, which is available today, and the common man can actually reach out to much more. When we were bankers, or in my previous avatar, the cost of lending for a large institution to small microloans is just prohibitive, and it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Whereas something like what Rangde does, and I really respect Smita and Ram, that when they're combining the power of peer-to-peer lending, social good, technology, good credit appraisal, and good cause, the multiplier effect is just phenomenal. It just gives me goosebumps to believe what can be achieved by these people, whether it's in the small villages, whether it's in the semi-urban India, even urban India, small shopkeepers. Now you combine that with people like Lavanya, or children who can sort of grow, and their parents do not curtail their ambitions, because people like us who are more privileged can contribute to it, will be powerful.
जी सिंघल जी, मैं आपसे पूछना चाहूँगी, जो हमारे सफल उद्योगपति होते हैं, सफल कारोबारी होते हैं, वो कैसे फेलो सिटीजन्स को एक राह दिखा सकते हैं कि इस सामाजिक इसमें निवेश करना चाहिए?
भगवान की बहुत कृपा है कि हम लोगों को भगवान ने जो दिया, ये हमारा कुछ तो हमारी मेहनत थी, बहुत ये भी था कि हम कहाँ पैदा हुए थे और किसको पैदा हुए थे। आई एम अ लेफ्टिनेंट जनरल सन, एंड उनकी यही मानना था कि एजुकेशन इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, क्योंकि हम लोग अफोर्ड कर चुके हैं। मैं मेयो कॉलेज गया, IIT गया, IIM गया, जस्ट नॉट टू शो ऑफ, बट क्योंकि हमारी एजुकेशन अच्छी थी हम कुछ कमा पाए। तो हमसे ये बनता है कि हमने जो कमाया हम देश को वापस दें। तो जो उद्योगपति हैं जो हैं, अपना अच्छा अपनी जिंदगी जिए, पर जरूरी ये भी है कि हम बाकी जितना हमसे बन पते, जो हम कहते हैं सेव, इन्वेस्ट, ग्रो, गिव। सो आई रन अ वेल्थ मैनेजमेंट कंपनी। उसमें हम ये जरूर मानते हैं कि ये चारों लेग्स बहुत जरूरी हैं। आप सेव भी करिए, इन्वेस्ट निवेश भी करिए, अपना पैसा बढ़ाइए, और जो बढ़ता है वो वापस भी दीजिए। सो गिविंग इज एज इंपॉर्टेंट एज ग्रोइंग योर वेल्थ।
Thank you so much, Mr. Shingle, for sharing those thoughts and being a part of this. It's so important to hear some of the key points that you mentioned. Now, the reason we need to invest now in the lives of children is abundantly clear. Never have children perhaps been more vulnerable. The COVID crisis and poverty have meant children getting into child labor, others taking up criminal activities, others have been depressed, as Nidhi was mentioning earlier on. We don't talk enough about that. We really should. And it's unclear where the future of so many children lies. Now, the impact of the lockdown on school enrollment and participation has also had other impacts that we need to speak about. Hygiene and nutrition, just two examples. Krishnan Subramanian Iyer joins us now. He's an investor and board member for several listed and privately held companies in India and the United States. Thanks very much for being with us. Now, you've been a believer of the Rangde model. You're also a social investor yourself. How do you think that social investing can be a game changer?
Thank you, Vishnu. Thank you. Few things is we've had a lot of people here speaking about doing good. One is I think I spoke about it, right? What if you do something which is sustainable, which goes on creating a, I think so. When I do my, I'm just not.
Krishna, I'm just going to ask you. I'm just interrupting you now. We've got a little problem with your line. We'll fix that problem. But Nidhi, I think the point that we were talking about a little while earlier on, it's what 3.75 crores that we've been able to raise in the course of this particular program, and the program is not over. And I think the point that Rangde wants to make is that these aren't just donations, these are accountable amounts.
Absolutely. And Vishnu, जो लोगों में जो ट्रस्ट की बात है वो उससे आएगी जब हमारे पहला जो कार्यक्रम था, जो किसान थे उन्होंने जो उनको लोन लिया था वो पूरा वापस किया। तो रंगदे ने ये बात, और रंगदे की साइट पे बात देखी जा सकती है। तो ये ट्रांसपेरेंसी है वो सामने है, लोगों का विश्वास रंगदे के साथ जुड़ना चाहिए, ये अपने आप में मुहिम है। आप बात कीजिए।
Krishna, we've got you back up. Go ahead with what you were telling us. Yeah.
See, I've been investing with Rangde platform for the past 18 months or so. So the thing is, what I really appreciate is how it reaches the end, and where it's deep, how they, in terms of employment or be whatever it is, incredibly amazing. Because I of companies in the US, and this kind of an I not get from few companies. So it's remarkable, and if you make one difference to one child, and what is it? I mean, you spoke about less than 1,000 rupees per month. I mean, people can have on. They spend 2 times, 3 times of that. So if you can't do that, I mean, what is the?
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Iyer. Thank you so much for joining and sharing your thoughts and views. Thank you so much.
We apologize for the line over there.
Yes. थोड़ा सा ऑडियो में प्रॉब्लम था। बहरहाल आगे बढ़ते हैं। अभी वो समय आ गया है कि हम देख रहे हैं कि जो बच्चों ने शिक्षा के स्तर पर पिछले 1 साल में खोया है, अभी भी स्थिति स्कूलों की शिक्षा की सुधरी नहीं है। हम जानते हैं किस तरह से पुणे के हालात हैं विष्णु, दिल्ली, महाराष्ट्र, पंजाब, सब जगह ये कोरोना संक्रमण के आंकड़े बढ़ रहे हैं। तो ऐसे में जो शिक्षा की स्थिति है वो साफ नहीं है। स्कूल खुलेंगे, कभी बंद हो जाएंगे, लेकिन बच्चों की शिक्षा जारी रहनी चाहिए। बच्चे घर में हैं, उनको एडजस्ट करना पड़ रहा है अपने नए वातावरण से। स्कूलों के दोस्तों के साथ जाके मिल के वो खेल नहीं सकते हैं। ऐसे में वाकई में उनके भविष्य लेकर वो जीवन को कैसे देखते हैं, प्रश्न खड़ा हुआ है। साथ ही सैनिटाइजेशन को लेकर, हाइजीन को लेकर, उनके खान पान को लेकर, क्योंकि जब वो स्कूल जाते थे खाने का पोषण भी उनको मिलता था, अगर हम निम्न वर्ग के परिवारों की बात करें। हमारे साथ एक बेहद खास टीचर हैं रंजीत सिंह दिसाले। टीचर हैं प्रतिवादी प्राइमरी स्कूल के विनर ग्लोबल टीचर प्राइज 2020। रंजीत जी, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद जुड़ने के लिए। पहले भी आप हमारे एनडीटीवी के साथ जुड़े हैं, एक बार फिर आपने तो एक तरह से पूरा बदलाव ही ला दिया एक सरकारी स्कूल में, और बच्चों का जीवन ही एक तरह से वहाँ पे आपने बदल दिया। खास तौर से लड़कियों का आपने बदला है। अब ये बच्चे पैंडेमिक में आपने शिक्षा को बहुत दिलचस्प बना दिया था, बच्चे उसमें इंटरेस्ट लेने लगे थे, लेकिन कोरोना में आपने क्या देखा, और खास तौर से हमारे शिक्षक वो भी प्रभावित हुए हैं इस कोरोना से। तो किस तरह से ये पूरा इंटरेस्ट बना रहे और कैसे जो लर्निंग है बच्चों तक और एक्सेसिबल बनाई जा सके?
हाँ, आपने ये बिल्कुल सही बात बोली कि ड्यूरिंग द पैंडेमिक काफी शिक्षा क्षेत्र है वो प्रभावित हुआ है। मगर आपने अगर देखा होगा ड्यूरिंग द पैंडेमिक डॉक्टर्स हैव सेव्ड द लाइव्स बट टीचर्स हैव सेव्ड द फ्यूचर ऑफ द वर्ल्ड। ये शिक्षकों ने एक बड़ा महत्वपूर्ण काम किया कि उन्होंने दुनिया का भविष्य को सेव करने की बात की है। हम जानते हैं बच्चों को साथ मिलके शिक्षा करना, शिक्षित होना, ये शिक्षकों के लिए काफी आनंद देता है। मगर ये टीचर्स जो हैं ये बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट क्रूशियल फैक्टर रोल प्ले करते हैं स्टूडेंट्स की लर्निंग में। मगर ये पैंडेमिक के दौरान ये जो ऑनलाइन टीचिंग कैसे की जाए, इसके लिए उनको अच्छी खासी ट्रेनिंग नहीं दी जा सकी थी। उनको पता भी नहीं था कि कैसे हम कैमरा के सामने आगे जाके बच्चों के साथ हम सिखाए, वो क्या सीख रहे हैं, वो भी क्या हमें सच में उसका पता चल भी सकता है कि नहीं। ऐसी बहुत सारी कठिनाइयां टीचर्स के सामने थी, मगर इनके साथ जूझ के टीचर्स ने मेरे ख्याल से काफी अच्छा काम किया है। ऑल द टीचर्स अक्रॉस द वर्ल्ड, नॉट ओनली इन इंडिया बट अक्रॉस द वर्ल्ड, have worked hard to shape the future of this world in this unprecedented times. It was very hard times for teaching community, but मुझे लगता है कि टीचर्स ने अपना रोल काफी हद तक प्ले किया है। मेरे ख्याल से अब इसमें भी हम ज्यादा बेहतर अपेक्षा कर सकते हैं, मगर मेरे ख्याल से ये पहला अनुभव था टीचर्स के लिए कि भी और पूरी दुनिया के लिए भी कि कैसे हम ऑनलाइन टीचिंग को एक मेन स्ट्रीम टीचिंग का फ्रेम में लेके आए और वहां पे हम टीचिंग को कंटिन्यू कर सके।
So thank you very much for joining us. I'm in absolute awe of you because you are an example of how an individual can make a major change in society. You don't have to have a huge organization. You as a teacher and what you teach, you don't just teach bookish stuff. You teach life skills and you prepare your students for how to face challenges in life. It's just wonderful. Can you just explain to us how you manage to continue in such challenging time that we are facing now?
You know, I've been working and I've been teaching my students online since 2014. So I have a little bit of experience how to teach online, how to manage a class, online class, how to engage the students. Because I personally feel, you know, teachers are real change makers who can change the lives of their students with the right mixture of chalk and challenges. During the pandemic, it was really biggest challenges for teachers, how to connect with the teachers, how to connect with the students. But I think, you know, technology is just a mean, not the end. And I use technology just to transfer, just to connect with my students, to share my experience, my learning and everything with my students. I haven't focused on traditional way of learning, like teaching them the textbook and very different, explaining different concepts. I'm more focused on equipping them to become the more problem solvers or innovative problem solvers. Rather than giving them the lectures, I use project-based learning method. My students have designed project based on their problems, like how much electricity they have been consuming, how much water they have been consuming, what is the temperature of their villages. When the temperature increases by 1 degree, how much electricity consumption increases. So they know, they collected the data, analyzed the data, and made some decisions based on the data they have collected. So this is how I think I have managed my online teaching classes rather than just focusing on traditional way of teaching. So it makes learning more joyful. Students start taking interest and they like it, because ultimately they have learned so many concepts through explained right now.
Absolutely.
But more
and you
important
remain
is
such an
more-
inspiration to so many children. And you know, that focus on building up life skills more than just bookish knowledge, that's so very important. Thanks so much for being with us, and continue being that fantastic teacher that you are, a friend of so many students. A teacher is ultimately a friend. Well, we are thrilled to announce another pledge coming this time from Kishore Rajgopal of Bengaluru. Your interest-free loan of 3 lakh rupees, thank you so much, will go a long way in securing the future of our country, of young Indians. Thank you for help creating that change. We're also joined at this stage by Salman Khan, founder of Khan Academy. Mr. Khan, great speaking to you. How do we make digital education more accessible to low-income households? How do we address, for example, the challenges of technology? There is varying internet stability, the lack of devices. How do we address that to make this all workable?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a push and a pull, and we're seeing this around the world, especially during the pandemic. We've seen, frankly, heroic efforts on the part of governments, corporations, philanthropists, school districts to try to push devices, push internet access out into the world. It's especially difficult if you think globally, but especially in areas like India, or when you think about rural areas. I do think that's where the role of government has to play a role. You're starting to have these low Earth orbiting satellites, things like Starlink from SpaceX. I think things like that can play a role. But it's got to be a joint effort by philanthropy, government, and corporations to ensure that everyone has access. Because once you have that, a lot of other services can be built on top of that. And then the pull aspect of it is, if we can build services that exist on these digital platforms where people realize, if I can get my family a reasonable broadband, if I can get them reasonable devices, they can get free education. They can get free tutoring. I have a platform, Schoolhouse.world, which is free tutoring for anyone in India or around the world. When people realize that those types of services that have a lot of value to them get unlocked once they have digital access, then I also think the digital access becomes more compelling. That not only gives them access to education, that gives them access to economic opportunities, to looking for jobs, to staying socially connected as well.
Mr. Khan, what are some of the lessons that India can learn from the world with regards to making education more accessible to the lesser privileged?
Well, I think it's both. I think there's a lot that the rest of the world can learn from India, because I think India is one of the places where things are not ideal in terms of digital access, but is making strides in low-cost devices, low-cost cellular access. You know, what we see around the world is a big push to getting digital in schools. In the United States, what we've seen, there's something called the E-rate program, where they taxed a little bit of everyone's cell phone bills so that they can get high-quality broadband and devices inside of schools. And what we've seen over the last 10 years in the United States, it's now pretty commonplace for schools to have internet access. And I think something like that in India would be very powerful. It would also make people gravitate towards the schools even more, not just the children, but frankly, even the adults in, say, a town or a village would then get gravitated to the school, maybe out of school hours, so that they too can access the internet, even if they don't have it at home.
Hi, Salman. Good to have you here. I just want to ask you a slightly technical question, because you are so involved in education in your life. How do we make digital teaching and digital learning as effective as face-to-face physical? That is a challenge we must overcome, right?
This is one of the more interesting things about digital learning, is not only is it a way to learn, but it's a way to take control of your learning. What we're hearing from schools around the world during the pandemic is some students struggled having more independence, having to do things at home, but some students really thrived. And the reality is, it's important to learn your reading comprehension, your writing, learning your how to factor a polynomial, but perhaps the most important skill over the coming decades is learning how to learn. And so right now we have an opportunity leveraging technology, ideally in conjunction with a physical classroom, to start to personalize to the needs of students, allow them to learn at their own time and pace, allow them to fill in their gaps. We have the ability now with platforms like schoolhouse.world to give free tutoring. The way that we can give free tutoring is that we have high quality volunteer tutors from around the world who are able to connect with whoever is watching children. And then these students can go on to become tutors themselves. So I'm really fascinated with how technology can unlock human-to-human interaction, either through a platform like Schoolhouse.world, where it's happening directly, or on things like Khan Academy, where if students are able to get some of their lectures or their practice at their own time and pace, then when they get into the classroom, they can have more interaction.
Thanks so much for being a part of this program. Thanks so much indeed. Well, we're coming to the end of this program, and we've got some fantastic news to share. We've been able to raise just under 4 crores at this stage. It's about 3 crore 84 lakhs that we've been able to raise thus far. But it's important to remember that this campaign continues. So you can log on to ndtv.com/Rangde if you want to become a social investor yourself, and if you want to participate in creating change and making a difference in the life of a child somewhere in India. Please do participate.
Yes, thanks to everybody for being with us this evening and for stepping forward. It really, really is so important, because it's amazing how the parents in our society, even the poorest of the poor, are ready to make such sacrifices to make sure their children are educated and they lead a better life. It's wonderful to see, and to help them do this is a huge, huge task that we all must be a part of. So thank you very much. Please come forward and help Rangde do this incredible task in a really important exercise. Thank you once again. Thank you for being with us.
और आप सबका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद कि आप इस कार्यक्रम में हमारे साथ जुड़े रहे। और जाते जाते रंगदे की जो समाज है, जो जिन्होंने इन्वेस्ट किया है, रंगदे के साथ जुड़े हैं, उनका आप सुनिए उनका अंत में क्या कहना है। धन्यवाद।
थैंक यू।
Can you imagine a time when each and every child in India can reach his or her full potential?
I believe social investing is all about empowerment.
When thousands of well-meaning people all across India contribute small amounts of money towards Rangde, it goes a long way in enabling children from underprivileged backgrounds.
सामाजिक निवेश के माध्यम से मैं उन लोगों की मदद कर पा रहा हूं जिन्हें इनकी बहुत आवश्यकता है।
Today I can impact the future of our country by investing in school-going children, eventually empowering their dreams.
Join us and several other social investors at Rangde to put a smile on the face of a child. Invest in education and transform the nation.
आइए और रंगदे की मदद से इन्वेस्ट कीजिए शिक्षा पर, एक बेहतर कल के लिए, एक सुनहरे पल के लिए। लिखोगे पढ़ोगे तो आगे बढ़ोगे, सितारों से ऊंचा तुम्हारा होगा नाम।